Welcome to Don't Whistle at Night podcast, where Navajo legends echo in the shadows. Darren and Dawn will guide you through the sacred fire of native storytelling, where the old stories breathe, the unknown walks among us, and voices, long hidden, rise to be heard. And remember, don't whistle at night.
Hi, everyone. Hi, hello. Welcome to Don't Whistle at Night. We are broadcasting live here on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans. I am your host, Don Yazzie. With me, my co-host, Darren Yazzie. And if you stayed after the show called The Chat, welcome. I'm Don Yazzie, like I said. Darren Yazzie will be joining us shortly. He's dealing with some technical difficulties at the moment, but he will join us shortly. And today's very special guest is A.D. Pratt, also known as AKA Big Indian. So, for those of you that don't know this gentleman that we're about to bring up, he is one of the most famous storytellers. I mean, I don't like to say storytellers, but people that have some information that needs to be shared out there with everyone, from cryptids to spirits to just acknowledging the unseen realm. And this next guest we're very honored to have. He's our first time here, and this guy has so many great encounters in his life, with so many different things. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce everyone. Big Indian, here he is.
Mike Mazie got his way. Mazie voted to remove Oklahoma from the Electoral College. Going to a national
hey, I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't?
I can't hear you.
That's Mike Mazie.
What? That's weird. Okay, hang on, guys. Hang on. Let's try this again. I think it's from you.
Number one is deleting photos manually.
I think you're playing something that's. Uh-oh. It was good earlier. Oh no. I have no idea what's going on here. Uh-oh. Hey, Big Indian, try going out and then coming back in. How about that?
Technical difficulties. I can't hear you on my end.
Oh man, what about closing all your other screens? Oh, we apologize, everybody. We apologize, everyone. We're dealing with some technical difficulties on all levels. So give us a few moments. Hey, Big Indian, try going out and then coming back in. How about that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Oh, we had a delay. That's what's going on. Yeah, that's what happens when it's a live show, everyone. It's a live show. So you deal with things like this, and it is what it is, but we'll make the most out of that sunshine, okay? So please be patient, and we appreciate your patience. So yeah, Darren, like I said, his something's going on with his mic. I don't know where he's at. So story time. We'll switch on over to story time till Darren and Big Indian comes back. Sunglass Grandma Cat. It's satellites.
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear you.
Hey, all right.
All right. Now we're in business.
Okay. All right. So, Big Indian, you want to introduce everyone to who you are?
Everybody, I'm on TikTok. My name is Big Indian. Everybody knows me by AD, but I go by Big Indian on here. I'm a regular storyteller. I go live and tell stories about the experiences that I've had. So I'm originally from Oklahoma, and I just barely moved back about 10 years ago. But I used to travel all around the world, going to different places, and so I've experienced a lot of paranormal activities in all my travels, and that's what I talk about.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Everyone out there, grab your popcorn, get your Dr. Pepper, and get comfortable. um, Big Indian, can you take us all the way back to the beginning? And oh yeah, for you guys listening out there, he's our Pawnee uncle, our Pawnee brother right here. Shout out to the Pawnee Nation, all you brothers and sisters out there, and every native ears out there. Hello and welcome. Okay, go ahead. It's all you now. Go ahead, Big Indian.
So my earliest encounter, I could say, was when I was probably about 5 or so. I was uh, I lived in an old house out in the country, and we used to have paranormal activity happening at this house, and there was a bunch of weird things that used to happen. Just a lot of things. Um, the people that lived there before had immediately and abruptly left, and so when they did, they left all their stuff behind, and so the owner put all their stuff out in the back field. Across the ditch, they just threw everything back there. And so when I was little, I used to go out there and play. I used to gather up all the tables and the couches and chairs, and I used to just sit there and just mess around with it. Just play around, jump on the couch and stuff. And I remember that I used to run into a little kid that used to be out there, and he would always try to get me to go into the there was a like a little forest. It was really thick trees, and he used to always try to get me to go out there all the time. And he would always, he'd sit there and play with me, do all different things, but he always wanted me to go with him past those trees into the trees, and I never did. And he never got violent, he never got mad or anything, but he'd just say, "Let's go play in those trees." I was like, "No, I'm fine playing here." And it wasn't until later on, probably about my fourth or fifth encounter, my mom asked me what I was doing, and I told him, "I'm out there playing with the little boy out there." And mind you, we're out in the country, middle of nowhere, and our closest neighbor was about 5 miles away. And there was no way that there was a small boy that used to go anywhere out there. And so then they put two and two together and said, it wasn't a small boy you're playing with, it was an LP, and it kind of, I didn't know at the time what that meant, what it was, the whole meaning behind it, but they were kind of scared for me. So I was never allowed to go back outside again, out in the backyard, to go play with that stuff. But that was just the first encounter that I can remember ever happening when I was little. And like I said,
Um,
there was a lot of scary things that used to happen at that house.
to be just for 1 second for our viewers and our listeners out there listening, LP means little people, little person. The LP is a TikTok handle, so TikTok is very very fragile. So um, that's for all you listeners out there. Go ahead, beginning. Sorry.
Yeah, and a lot of things is we don't say what that is, because when you start saying their name, you call them out, So
Mm.
I'm sitting outside right now, and it's dark outside, and if I keep saying it over and over again, I will attract them to me, and that's something I don't want to do. And so I use the references, LPs, SWs, things like that. I don't. I try not to say the word out loud because I don't want to be calling them, summoning to me. So that's the reason why that is the way it is. But yeah, that was one of the first experiences I ever had when I was little. You know, like I said, there was a lot of scary things that used to happen at the house. And it wasn't the last time. There was so many encounters I can remember before we actually left the place. So it was pretty crazy.
Oh man, um, those little beings. Well, have they always been around your family as well? Like your generational, you guys see them all the time, or do you guys like made trades with them back in the day? Do you have any?
We the way I was told that I'm originally come from two tribes, one from up north and one from down south. The one up north, those are our protectors. There's two types, that they do harm, and the other ones are mischievous, and the other ones protect you. And that's what the family up north, they protect us. And so it's kind of, when people talk about it, there's certain things, they say it's a bad thing, things like that. Well, for the tribe up north, it's a good thing. They're there to help you, because they know that you're in a bad way. And so it's kind of hard to explain, but the ones up north, they are our medicine. Whenever something happens, they're there to protect us. They're there to heal us. They're there to make sure that we're 100% okay. There's several incidences that happened where they came to my family and they prayed over them. They helped them. And these people were on their deathbed. And they helped them recover from that. So a lot of people, they'll sit there and look at it. Well, it's all a bad thing. No, it isn't. There's two types, good and bad. And so the ones up north, the ones my family, they get watched out for is the good type. And I don't know about the other side if they're bad type or not, but I'm just thankful for the ones up north. That they're always been looking out for me. Even when I'm down here down south, they look out for me as well.
Well, that's what's up. That's nice. That's a really good one. I heard from subarctic Sasquatch, this one Alaskan Native. He said the good ones, they have a hood on. Then the bad ones, they have like a pointed hat, like a gnome type of deal. And they say the gnome looking ones are the bad, mischievous ones. And yeah, there's multiple different types for sure. And I've heard the Christians, they call them demons, right?
Demons or duendes.
Duendes.
Yeah, I
Oh
know
man.
Christians call them duendes as well. As well as demons.
Hmm. Okay, I don't know what happened to Darren.
Oh, there he is.
Darren. Okay,
Uh-oh.
I can't see him. Oh, looks like he's having technical difficulties.
Yeah, he's popping in and out.
Oh man. Yeah. So, this little person or the LP, do you remember how it looked or how it was dressed?
He dressed like a regular boy. He dressed just like me. He had a shirt, jeans on, tennis shoes. He's about the same height as me and everything. He was just like a regular kid. It was no different than anybody else. You see a kid on the street, that's what he looked like. He was the same height as me, and he was just friendly. He just wanted to play. But he would always try to get me to go into the woods all the time. Every time we'd play, he would always sit there and say, "Let's go over there and play. Let's go over there." And I said, "No." I didn't have. I always had a bad feeling about going over there, so I stayed where I was at. I wouldn't go past that tree line.
Man, yeah, I've always heard that they're always trying to lead children away.
Yeah.
And we have like a story like that too. A guy got led away, and every now and then he comes back, like every 10 years, and he's aging slow. He said they're teaching him something in the future, and he's gonna save mankind. Something like that. I've heard a story like that. So, it's just all a bunch of it's just mystery, mystery after mystery.
Right.
So, after that experience, uh, did you keep seeing the same little person, or did you keep seeing the same little person?
Well, like I said, I've seen him about 4 or 5 times. I would go outside and go play, and I would see him. He'd always be at the site, jumping on the couch when I'd go out there. And so we'd sit there and play around. We'd sit there and jump on the couch. We'd run around the table, things like that. Then he'd always tell me, "Let's go play out in the trees." I was like, "No, I don't want to go over there." Then finally, when I told my mom about it, she told me to stay away from there. And so I never did go back out there. So I never did see him again after that. But
Mhm.
like I said, I used to always have a bunch of scary experiences that happened in that house we stayed at. I don't know if it was caused by him or any other beings or anything else, but it was strange.
Like poltergeist type of deal, or
Yes, yes.
could you lead us into them if you don't mind?
Um, one of the incidents that used to happen is we would. It, let me describe the house. It had a really huge living room, Then you walk in and it would go into like a kitchen slash dining room area. Then off to the right was a little closet. Then next to the closet was another door that led up to the attic. Then off to the left of that was another room, and we use that for storage and stuff. Then you go out to the back door. Then they had like this big old huge back patio. It was an enclosed patio. Then you go outside to the backyard, and it was just an open floor plan is what it was. And I used to remember hearing people walking in through the house because it was all wood flooring, and you would hear people walking through the house, and it would be just me and my mom sitting at home, and we'd just sit there and kind of look at one another, and she'd always shh, don't say anything, you know. And so I would sit there and listen, and you could hear them walking through the house, and it wasn't like somebody with tennis shoes on. It was like with boots or with somebody with, like hard soles. You could hear them walking through the house, and it was really weird. And they would always go out the back door, so we wouldn't say anything. We would just get quiet and, just let it be. But a lot of incidents like that would happen. And I remember the attic door was very, very hard to open. It had swollen shut. And we used to use a crowbar to open the door up. And we never did go up there. We never stored nothing up there, nothing, because it was really scary looking. The previous owner, as soon as you walk up the stairs, it opens to a little room. I don't know, like a little, I don't know, like a little office area, something like. But you go around the banister and you walk in, and it's just an open floor plan of the attic. But that little room that they painted it black and red. It was black, and you could see that they tried to look like flames. It was really scary when I was little. So I never did want to go up there. I never did had any desire to go upstairs, and I used to stay out of that. And so I never went up there. I never tried to open the door because, like I said, you had to have a crowbar to open it up. And usually my mom and dad, they would hear something, and so they would use a crowbar and open the door to go look to see if somebody was up there, but there would be nobody up there, so they would come back down, they'd slam the door shut, and they'd leave it, and that would be the end of it. But I remember seeing that several times. You could hear people walking around upstairs, but there'd be nobody up there. And the really specific time that made us leave the place was the house that house, it had a well, but it had a hole in it. So you could put water in the well and it would hold for like 3 to 4 days, then it would drain out, or you'd use the water up. We would have to travel to town to get water and come back and fill the tank up again. And so we were in town. Me and my dad had went to town to get water, and my mom had just got off work, and she just got paid, and she was planning on taking us out to dinner that night, with her paycheck. And so we were gone out, we went to town, and my mom left town and came home, and she was sitting on the couch, and she was in the living room. Now, our living room was so huge that we had 3 couches in each side of the wall, and so that was kind of like our bed. My mom slept on one couch, my dad slept on the other, and I slept in the middle. And that's how our sleeping arrangement was. And she came home and she sat down on the couch and laid down. She was waiting for us to come back because she knew we went to go get water. And so she was waiting for us. And when she did, she heard that closet or that attic door open up. It just slowly creaked open. There's no crowbar included. It just opened up on its own. And she thought it was us coming in from the back door. And so she got up and she looked and she called my dad's name, and she realized it was the door that opened up. And so it scared her. And so she kind of, you kind of creep around the corner and look up. And so she looked up the stairs, and it looked like that room was on fire because the painting and everything was moving. So it looked like it was literally on fire, and it scared her. And so she ran outside and she got in the car and she parked out front of the house. And so she got in the car and she started it. And the way the car was at the time, it was an old style car. You had to put it in second, first, then drive. If you didn't, it would stall and you'd have to wait a few minutes to start it up again. Well, she got so scared, she just threw it in drive and tried to take off, and the car died. And so she was fighting with it. She put it in park. She was trying to start it. She was trying to get it going again, and it wouldn't go, and it wouldn't start. She kept fighting with it. She kept praying, "Oh my God, please start, please start, please start." And it finally started, and she looked in the rearview mirror, and she seen the screen door opening up slowly. And so she threw it in the second, first drive, and she took off. And she was flying down the road, and the trip takes about 20 minutes to get from that house to town and to my uncle's house. Excuse me. And we had went to my aunt and uncle's house for some reason. We went to my aunt and uncle's house, and we were sitting over there. And my dad was talking with my aunt, and I remember standing at the front door, and I was like, "Whoa, Mom's really flying down the road." And they had a half a mile driveway, and everybody got up and they come, to the door to see what's going on. And my mom was flying down the driveway, and she come flying up to the front door, and she got out. You could tell she was scared, and she was telling us what had happened. And so all my cousins were there, and I'm just a small kid at this time, and all my cousins, they're all adults, they're in their 20s, in their teens, late teens. And so they listened to the story, and my uncle, he used to be a really powerful medicine man, but he turned his life around and went to God. But he told all his kids, "Let's go." And just so happened my grandpa was there. And my grandpa, he was also a medicine man. He was really powerful. And everybody got in their trucks, and my aunt, she took care of my mom. They all stayed at the house. And I wanted to go with my grandpa and dad. I was really adamant about going with them. So I jumped in the truck with them. And we all took off. We all went to the house. And on the way over, my aunt was calling my cousins up in different locations in town and told them, "Go to the house. They have something going on at the house." So a couple of my other cousins, they showed up, before we even got there. And so we got there and they were already there. And we told them what had happened, what's going on. We're going inside to get my mom's purse, and that's all we're getting, and we're leaving. Now, mind you, this was summertime in Oklahoma. We didn't have air conditioning at the time in that house. There was no air conditioning, to be spoken of at that place. And all the windows were open. Every window in the house was open. We'd leave it open all the time, even at night. We had screens on the windows, but we'd leave the windows open all the time in summertime because it was so hot. But when we got to the house, all the windows were closed. The front door was closed. The windows were closed. Everything was shut down. It was odd, to see that. And I remember sitting there, and I was like, "Wow, this is kind of crazy." All of my cousins got out. They all got out of their cars, and they all met with my grandpa and my uncle, and they were out sitting there talking out in the front yard. And I remember sitting in the truck of the car, and my dad told me to stay there. Don't get out of the truck. And my grandpa come over, and he told me, he says, "Do not get out of this truck. Do not let nobody in the truck." Then all of a sudden he hands me a pistol. And I was like, whoa, it got serious. I got really scared then. You don't give a 5-year-old one of those, and I'm just like, what do I do? I was scared. And so everybody started going in the house. And as soon as they walked in the door, it immediately sounded like they were fighting. It just sounded like, there we go. I can hear you now.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded like a huge fight. Everybody was fighting, hollering, screaming, and I'm scared. I'm freaking out. I'm just a little kid. I'm hearing all this stuff. And I had this big old huge dog. His name was Bush. And he belonged to my grandpa. And my grandpa was a pastor, and he prayed over this dog. And he told me that this dog will protect you. So no matter whatever he does, trust him. I was like, okay. But I was scared about everybody in the house. And all of a sudden I saw my dog. He come running to the door, and he was scratching to try to get in. And so I opened the door, and he climbed in. He sat next to me, and he kind of put his arm around me, and he was sitting there growling. He was growling at the house. It wasn't growling at me, but he's growling at the house. And he was sitting there. You could hear him bark once in a while, but the entire time it sounded like everybody in the house was fighting. And I was like, "Oh my God, what is going on?" I was scared. I was freaking out. I don't know what to do, but I had a clear shot, a line of sight into the house, and all of a sudden I saw my uncle and my grandpa going up the stairs to the attic, and they had a little pan of medicine. You could see the smoke burning, and so they start making their way up the stairs, and you can hear my grandpa singing and talking in Indian. He's praying, going up the stairs, and at the same time, all my cousins look like they're fighting something that wasn't there, but they're fighting. Their shirts are getting torn up, they're getting scratched, everything. It was a scary incident to see. And they finally go upstairs, and everybody had made their way upstairs. I couldn't see nobody downstairs anymore, which really made me scared. And I had no idea what was happening. I was, like I said, I was just a kid. I had a pistol in my hand. I had my dog with me. I was all freaking out. I was sitting in the front seat crying in the pickup. And all of a sudden, I heard this god awful scream. I mean, it was just a horrible scream. And all the windows in the house burst out. And it freaked me out seeing this, and I had no idea what was happening. And I start screaming, and finally everybody come downstairs. They walked down the stairs. I saw all my cousins come out. And the last person I saw come out of the attic was my grandpa. And everybody's shirts were torn. They were scratched. It looked like they'd been in a big fight. And they all came outside, and my dad had my mom's purse in his hand. And for some reason, it was upstairs in the attic. It wasn't downstairs where she had left it, but it was in the attic. And so they come outside to the cars. Everybody got in, and my grandpa, he grabbed his pistol back. And he said to us, "Let's go." So everybody got in their cars, and we left, and we went back to my uncle's house. We got to the house, and we started telling the story. I was listening to their story. They were telling, this is what happened. This is what's going on. And I was just amazed about what was going on, what I was hearing. And my aunt, she was a nurse at the time, and so she was tending to everybody's wounds. She had everybody bandaged up. She was taking care of everybody was fine, and it was just a scary night, But that was my first encounter, and we never went back to the house again. Never did we go back. And my grandpa made a few calls, and come to find out that that house that we lived in, they used to do evil medicine in front of the house. They would have meetings for this. And so all this bad feelings, energy, medicine, everything went into the house. And so that's what we were up against. That's what we lived in that environment. And I remember when we used to lay in the living room trying to go to sleep, my dog would be at the window, and I would hear him growling. He would be right by the window. I'd look up, and I'd put my hand at the window, and I'd sit there as if it's okay, Bush, Bush. And he would sit there and be growling, inside the house. He'd be trying to, whatever was inside. Then after a while, he'd quit, So whatever it was, he was protecting me. That was from whatever was in the house. But we never went back after that. We just left everything behind. We had a car that was there. We left that. We left our belongings. We started all over from scratch. I mean, it was just a horrible incident. It was bad. But that was my very first, the really very first horrific incident that I'd had. I remember that really clearly. And a lot of my cousins here, they remember that. We discuss it sometimes when they tell scary stories. Oh, remember that house you used to live at? And we kind of laugh around about it now. But I was like, yeah, he said, I remember. And he says, yeah, I still got the scar, or they reference the scars that they have, from when they got scratched and got beat up from that place. So it was quite interesting.
Yeah, that's, ooh, man. Like, as soon as you said your mom's purse was upstairs, I'm like, geez, man. That's very dark right there. That's very dark.
Yeah, because we got back to my aunt's house, and they were asking, did you get my purse? I left it on the couch. So that's how I know it was downstairs. But my dad come out from the attic with it in his hand. So that's how I knew it was upstairs. So something took it from downstairs to upstairs. So it was scary. It was just I just get chills thinking about it.
Yeah. It's a very unsettling chills. It's just like maybe it's like a habit, whatever someone brought to that house, maybe someone's belongings or hair, and then that thing just took it up there to the attic.
Yeah,
So like I don't really I'm not really sure. But
yeah.
yeah.
It took her possessions upstairs is what it did. Because
Ooh.
that's where it was strongest was upstairs. So it was pretty crazy.
So yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Hey Darren, are you all right? Oh, I think he's still having some problems. Yeah. Um, so they used to do bad medicine there, huh? And I know you have a kick-ass story of bad medicine that you also have as well, but I think we'll save that for a little later. Um, do you think that house is still standing?
Oh, it's still there. It's really dilapidated though. I do my best to avoid that road. I don't go down that back road very often, but when I do, I look over at that house, and the trees have kind of come around the house. It's not completely swallowed by the trees, but there's trees all around it, and the roof is caved in. The windows are all knocked out and everything. It's really dilapidated, and it's in bad shape. It's not livable, but it's still there. And I do my best to avoid it. And I tell people, there's a couple of my friends in the area, and I tell them about that story, and they're trying to be junior ghost hunters. We got to go out there one time. We got to go out there at midnight. I says I'll drop you off, and I'll pick you up, in an hour. But I'm not gonna go over there because I know exactly what's there. I'm too scared to be out there at night. I'll go in daytime and I'll stand at the end of the driveway, but I'm not gonna go out there at night. I refuse to. It's scary. And one night I had to drive by that house at night. It was raining, and I saw somebody standing at the end of the driveway, just standing there watching me go by. And it was scary to see that. And like I said, there's nobody lives around there. It's an empty area. There's no reason for anybody to be in the end of the driveway. But I saw somebody standing there, and I couldn't make out what they looked like or anything because it was raining, it was dark, and all I saw was their silhouette. They're just standing there. And I'm just like, nope, I'm not stopping. I'm keep going. Kept my head straight. And I just went on ahead. But it was scary.
Oh man, it's probably saying, "Welcome home. I thought you weren't ever gonna come back."
They,
Oh man, welcome with big old arms like this.
yeah,
Oh
they stuck
man.
their arms out. I would have just took off. I'd have gunned it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you on that. I have not gone back to my aunt's house in Mesa where I have my ghost stories. I don't want to go back at all. Forget that. So I understand that part. Hey Darren, are you okay? Do you have any questions for beginning? No, no, I can't hear you. Oh, yeah, no, nothing. Again, sorry. Jeez. But try again.
Can you hear me
All right.
now?
How about now? Yeah,
There we
I can
go.
hear you now. You got a
You
question
can
for
hear me?
beginning?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Oh man, I have
So,
quite a bit, but I'll wait and I'll hear your stories. I seem to
oh,
I don't know.
you got delay.
uh
Oh,
shit.
oh, Darren, we got delay
I
on
guess
your
they don't
end.
want me to speak, man. So I'll just go ahead and listen if you can hear
Oh,
me.
okay. All right, man. Hey, as long as you're there,
Yeah, I
that's
can.
all that counts. That's all that matters. All right. All right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, there's
so you guys,
time to talk and time to listen, so I'll go ahead and listen right now.
okay. Sounds good, man. Sounds good. If you have a question, you can type it in on the chat, and then I'll blow it up for Big Indian, like native daughters are here. Hey, native daughters. All right. So after the house incident, so you guys had to move out of there, and the next house wasn't so bad, huh, I'm guessing.
No, no, we never did have any more incidences after that. When we moved to the new residence, we still, like I said, we left everything behind. We started over, and everything was fine. We never had any kind of problems after that.
Oh man, no one levitating off the bed, huh?
Nope, nope.
Oh man. Yeah. So in Oklahoma, my time there, I know that you guys have your own Sasquatch that's in the Ozarks. They're wandering around, and there's also that light. There's like a light too. I can't remember what it was called. It had a nice name to it. But you're not near that high strange part of Oklahoma, are you?
No, not with the light, but there's Sasquatch in the area. He was hollering around here the other night, last week. I was sitting
Oh man.
outside and I heard him hollering, and I went in the house because I was going to go live on TikTok. I was going to sit there and tell my stories and everything. I had everything all set up, and I was ready to go. And I kept hearing the dogs barking. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And while I was getting everything set up, getting tuned up, I heard him hollering, and I was like, "Yep, it's time for me to go in." So I packed everything up and I went in the house. I was like, "Nope, I'm not doing this tonight." But that's the reason why the dogs were all barking. I guess they smelled him or heard him before or something. But when I came outside, I finally heard him, and I went in the house. I was like, "I'm not dealing with this."
Oh yeah. That's a wise decision right there because whenever my kids are up, back when we used to live on the Navajo Nation, we used to be up at 2, 1 in the morning. And once we hear him screaming around, I'm like, hey, turn off the lights, go get to bed. If you're going to be up and awake, he's going to be curious and he's going to be wanting to peek in the window. You don't want that. But so after the housing incident, so what else happened?
After that, we never did really had any incidences until we left Oklahoma, and from there we went to Colorado. We moved to Denver, and we had whole kinds of incidences happen up there. I mean, it was weird. There's SPs. If you want to type in the chat what that is, we ran into a bunch of those there, and we would see them. My cousin and his family lived 3 blocks away from my aunt's house, and we were staying at my aunt's house until we got our place. And so we would go to my cousin's house, and because they had the kids over there, we'd go over there after school and go play. And we see these SPs running around the house. It was really crazy. They'd be standing in the doorway.
One question. I don't think I know what an SP is. Sorry.
A shadow person.
Oh, okay. Jeez, I should have guessed that one. Okay, shadow person. All right. All right, we'll burn some sage for you over there. I got some sage right here. All right.
But yeah, we used to see those all the time in my cousin's house. They would be standing on the doorway, or they'd run up and down the stairs, because they had a basement to their place, and they would run up and down the stairs. They'd peek around the corners at us, and it was crazy at my cousin's house. Go ahead.
No, Big Indian. Were they always on the side of your eye, or did you just get a dead look at him, or
dead look at him?
Kind of peek behind the corners.
There was times that they would peek around the corners, and there was times that they'd stand in front of you. They'd be right in the doorway looking at you, and you could see right through them, but you could see what they were.
Was it like the same as the sleep paralysis too?
No.
And you would see them at night, just freeze up.
No, we just sit there and look at them, like, ooh, we just kind of step away from them. There was no paralysis about it. We just sit there, look at them, what they were, and we would back up away from them, because we knew not to mess with them, to stay away from them, because that was, bad juju, more or less. And so we wouldn't mess with them, so we'd wait for them to leave. And when they'd leave, then we continued doing what we're doing. But there was always at my cousin's house. I don't know why. There was always over there. And that was my cousin's house. Now, at my aunt's house where we lived at, her basement was extremely haunted. Something lived in her basement, and it would terrorize the entire house. She had a big old 3-story house, and we lived on the very top in the attic area, but it was converted into an apartment. And so we lived up there, and you would hear whatever it was run up and down the stairs, because the stairs would come down and then curve around. And it was all wood floor. And so you'd hear them running down the stairs, and you'd hear them run through the kitchen out the back door, so whatever it was always in the house. It was freaky, but there was always something happening either at my aunt's house or my cousin's house. There was like really no safe space for us anywhere, and there was always something going on. All of us kids would experience it.
Yeah, that usually does happen. The kids are usually the ones that deal with, the unseen, whether it's brought in by alcoholic parents or Ouija board or just ghosts that were forced to stay on the res, ghosts on the reservation,
Yeah.
it varies. Darren, you got a question?
Yeah, these SPs give you. Do they smell? Did they ever leave a smell behind, or
No,
anything?
no,
They didn't.
they were
No
they were
cold
just fast.
presence. No,
No, they were just fast.
no cold atmosphere.
Pass.
No, they were fast. They would just be in the doorway. The next thing you know, they're gone. Just blink of an eye, they'd move. They'd be quick. Or you'd see them peek around the corner, when they come up from the basement, and we'd be going to the basement. We'd see them, we'd stop, and they'd sit there and peek around the corner. Then they'd pop their head back out, and so then we would kind of wait a bit. Then we'd go down to the stairs, and there would be nothing down there. Then we'd go down to the basement, and there'd be nothing, nobody in there. We'd be down there for a while. We'd playing whatever, watching TV. Then in the doorway of another room, they'd be standing there watching us. Now in that room, they had no light in there at all. There was no electricity into that room. It was like a storage room, but it was all it was all carpeted and everything. And you'd see them standing right in the doorway. And when they didn't want to be seen, they'd step back into the shadow and they'd be gone. But they had no after effects, presence, smell, nothing. They'd just be there and gone the next. And my cousins, him and his wife, they would see it. And they were both religious people. And so and they would carry a Bible with them at all times because of this always happening. And so whenever that would happen, they'd grab their Bible and whip it up. I rebuke you, demon, and it would take off. It'd be gone. That was how they got rid of it. Because they're all church-going people. There was no alcohol, no cigarettes, nothing. There was nothing like that in the house. It was crazy. But I guess whoever lived there before had something in that house. I guess I don't know. But it was, like I said, it was
Do you know
crazy incidences.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who the owner of the house was before you guys lived there?
No. It was an apartment because they had my cousin and him stayed right in the middle. Then there were two other people that stayed because it was like a big old horseshoe, and as soon as you come out the back door, there's like a little patch of grass area, look like like the backyard, but it could be enjoyed by all families. Then on the side of the house was the front doors on this side. Then the front door in the middle for my cousin's house. But it was just like a big old huge complex. And we don't know who owned it and who lived there beforehand. But we knew the people next door to us because they would go to the same church. That's how my cousin got into the house. Is because they were all religious. They all went to the same church, and they said that we have an open apartment. You should come and get it. And so they did. So all them people that lived in that place, they all went to the same church. They were all religious, but there was something always happening there. It was crazy.
Man, did a lot of people get possessed?
That really is odd.
Was there like a lot of possessions going on with the family members? I know they correlate. That's the reason. Oh, really? That's awesome. Shoot, man. Well, that's good. That's good out of that one. Usually, like when we, like from my memory in the past that we dealt with growing up, we had a problem with one jumping in one kid, one teenager, and then the other teenager. So it was just it got really weird. A lot of possessions going on. I seen a lot of possessions, a little bit more than UFOs and skinwalkers. So that's one of the strangest things that I have yet to understand is demonic possession, especially on people. So Darren, you have any questions?
Oh no, let's keep it rolling right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, beginning.
Yeah, I'm eater here more of a big Indian stories. Actually, his whole life is just one experience. One encounter, and I do hear him
Oh
on
yeah.
TikTok. And it's good. It's good to put. It's good for me to see you. It's good to know who you are a bit, and you hear a voice, but you don't know who it is. But now I know who you are. I see you. So, uh, it's a treat. It's a real treat. Hearing not just being the first Pawnee, but being a part of the group right here. And there's a lot of respect going around, and that's what it's all about. Mutual respect. And I know there's some stories that you don't want to talk about, like I think it was the incident in California with in the cave, I guess you would say, with your biters, I guess you would. I don't know how you say it, vampires. I think.
Oh yeah,
But
that was in a different state. But yeah, the people always try to get the location of where they was at, but I'll never disclose that.
you know,
Because they
you know
they
that,
always
and
want
that,
they want to go there, but I was like, nope.
right, and that's just this is just a story of caution. Most of all these stories are just cautionary stories, so that just adds more to that, and for safety, personal safety of other well-beings, and you've been through it, you've seen it. Now you're just warning. You have stories to tell people. Don't go here, don't do this, and eventually, don't whistle at night. And
Yeah,
you can see us on we're doing some footage, and Don, if you look on this TikTok live, he's always whistling and always stirring the pot pretty good. So we have some footage. We got some good footage of it, and I'll give you a good reason why you don't want to whistle at night. And yeah, it's pretty scary, pretty interesting. But yeah, we hope to get that out to everybody out here in the streams. World out here in a bit. But let's get more into it. Let's get to know. Everybody wants to know who Big Indian is if they don't already know. He's a kind of TikTok famous guy, man. And I'm eager to hear more stories. Let's get into it.
Oh yeah. Before we get in there, Big Indian, can you remind everyone how to find you on TikTok to hear more of your amazing life stories?
Oh, on TikTok, my handle is Big Indian. That's what I go by on there. BIGNDN. And I go in there and I surf around. And there's days I go on lives and I'll go in there and I'll tell stories. There's a couple followers that I go follow, and they go live and tell scary stories. And so I'll go in there and join them. And so that's where a lot of my followers come from. They hear my stories, then they follow me from that live. Then they kind of build from there. And so it's just been growing little by little. It's not a huge following, but the community is huge. Everybody wants to hear these stories. Everybody is fascinated, by the stories that I tell because it's unique. It's something I've experienced. It wasn't something that I've heard secondhand. My cousin told me the story about his cousin did this or something. It's something that I've witnessed firsthand, and so it attracts a lot of attention. People follow that. They look at it and they say, "Wow, this is interesting. I got to know more." And so they follow for different stories like that. And so I get on TikTok and I tell my stories, and I have thousands of stories. Like these two stories I just told you. There's two. They they were from age 5 to 7. That's it. Those are just the two stories. And I'm 50 years old now, and I have stories like I said that happened last week. Bigfoot hollering down the road. I have thousands of stories that happen, and so I get on TikTok and I like to share them. Then there's stories that I don't tell and I won't ever tell because for one I don't have permission, or they're just too sensitive, or there's a couple that are just way off the limits. I don't want to terrify anybody about it or anything. And there's some that they want the locations, they want exact times and dates. When this happened, this and that, and I'm not going to do that. There's certain protections that I'm doing for certain people in the tribes. These locations are where they're at. I don't want nobody to come to harm. I don't want to be, that person that gets somebody in trouble or harmed. Because I want to keep a clean conscience about all that. So I don't disclose notifications or anything.
Yep.
And that's a lot of things that people want. Where this happen at? I want to go there. I want to go see it. I want to experience it. No, you don't. You don't need to do that. It was scary enough. And it was dangerous. So me telling a story is good enough. And if you don't believe me, that's okay. That's fine. Everybody has their opinion, but I'm just telling you what I experienced at that time, and I'm just trying to keep you safe. In case you come across something like that, walk away.
Yep, that's we have feet. Sometimes we use it for walking, in other towns it's for running. But
Yep.
either way, it's to get away. It's your natural instinct to if you have to get away, get away. Especially with stuff you don't know. On the spiritual level, and in this verse that we're living in right now, there's some things you can't run from. Once you attract it, and then it's always on you, and it'll always be on you, especially with these spirits. People always talk about, oh, I want to see this, I want this to happen. I totally agree with you, like, no, you don't. No, you don't. And it's a burden, it's always going to be on your flesh afterwards. And sometimes it's nearly impossible to get it off without proper ways, proper exorcisms, and it's not, it's people jump on this, they listen, for the entertainment, and I understand that, I totally understand that for the entertainment purposes, but some people don't believe, they have a hard time believing that this is real, stories that we're telling on here are real, what we've been through is real. And that's one aspect that we're trying to give a shout out to the world out there, the Native American in this Turtle Island. We experience stuff, we see world in a different verse. We see our eyes and our body are able to be tuned into such events like these. As for why, I don't know, but together I think we can all put a mind to it and help each other. But as for that, it's really true. It's truly frightening, even just walking outside, I'm always have an eye out, always have ears out, because from what I've seen, and so onto that, I know you told a story about I think it was a haunted job site. I don't know if you want to get into that, but that's one thing we don't really have. Or was that
I think yeah, I think we'll just let him go in chronological order.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
It's I got people coming and say, hey, tell the story about this, tell the story about that.
Yeah.
All right. It's all you, brother. Go ahead.
So what age are we at now? 4 to 7?
4 to 7. 4 to 7.
All right, let's go to 7 to 8 now. Let's see.
Okay, so when we used to see these SPs at my cousin's house, let's move to my aunt's house. My aunt had this big old 3-story house, and there was something in her basement. I don't know what it was. It was really, really unsettling. And I remember one time she had us go downstairs because she had stuff stored downstairs. She said, go downstairs and get this box. And she told us all us kids to go down there. And all of us kids, we knew not to go down there by ourselves. That was just one of the rules that we had. Don't go down there because there's something down there and it'll get you. And so there was 5 to 6 of us. And she told all of us, let's go down there and go get it. Go get that one box. And so we went down there to go get it. And you walk down the stairs and it's all dark down there. And it had like this little dim bulb, like you see in the movies, like a little dim bulb right above you. You pull the chain, the light comes on, doesn't get everywhere. And it just covers this one little spot. And the box should be right there. So we're there looking for this box. And over to the right is like a long hallway with other stuff. Then there's a room to the left with some more stuff. but we're looking right here in this little area because that's where her stuff is. So we're looking for this box. I don't know what was in the box, but she said it was a rose on it. So we're looking for this box to find it. And while we're down there, we can hear something growling from the corner over here. And it freaked us out. All of us kids, we heard it. We all like, oh my God, let's get out of here. And so we were sitting there trying to find his box quickly. One of my cousins found it and he tossed it. He turned around, he just threw it up. He threw it up the steps out to the outside. And all of us kids, he told us, let's go. And all of us kids just start piling out of there. We went running out of the basement. And the last kid to get out of the basement, the doors, mind you, they opened up like this, like the old cellar doors. The last kid come popping out. And when he did, them doors slammed shut, slammed on him. And it freaked us out. We're just like, oh my God, we're like, we're kids, we're freaking out. And it scared us, and we told our parents, we told the adults what happened and everything else. And so my cousins, they went down there because we left the light on. And so they had to go down to go turn the light off. And so they tried to get into that door and it was locked. It wouldn't open. And there was no way that the door would lock. There was no lock on it, but it was locked for some reason. And so they finally got it open and the light was off. They went downstairs, turned the light on, and they turned it off to make sure it was off. And they came upstairs and they shut the doors and they left it at that. But all of us kids heard something's growling from this corner over here. It was a deep guttural growl. And we all got scared. We left. And none of us kids had never went back downstairs after that. We weren't asked to go downstairs and we never had a desire to go downstairs. And that was just one incident that happened there. And like I said, there was people walking through the house all hours of the night. You can hear them walking. And we lived in a house that 12 people lived in. A big 3-story house, and there's 12 people that lived in this house. But at night, you'd hear it sounded like all 12 people were up walking around the house, but everybody's in bed asleep. Because like I said, it's a Christian household. Everybody goes to bed at night. And so there's no reason for anybody to be up, but you can hear people walking around the house, and it was scary. I used to just sit there and pray, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. And I would go to sleep and just to avoid the noise of hearing people walking around. And I was glad when we left Colorado. It was a scary incident.
So did you guys ever catch audio of these, or this is probably way back before handheld audio? So
oh yeah, this is, like I said, we were kids at the time, so we didn't know to grab a tape recorder to record this. And this was way before technology had the cameras or little spirit boxes or little microphones or anything. This is way before that. This was in the early 80s when all this happened.
wow.
Early 80s, mid 80s. So it was crazy.
Yeah.
So all these incidences that happened are from memory. There's no proof of any of this happening. I can't say, well, listen to this. Here's a recording of it. I wish I could, because that would be real scary, but I don't. I mean, that's the one thing I regret, having a tape recorder when I was little.
Yeah, this is for all the younger audience out there. There was an era where no one had cell phones. Believe it or not, that might be a scary thought for the youth. And internet wasn't there either. And
there was no cable.
There was no cable. No, believe it or not, I think that might be the scariest event in human history right there for the youth. But as for now, you got so much technology and it boomed so heavy. You got the internet. We got the radio station out here doing broadcast live, and we're not we're hundreds of miles apart, and we're able to talk like this. Which is a unique place in life right now. And, we can gather more information on this. And thank you. Big Indian, it's kind of, you can say that you were scared, but, everybody was scared. Everybody on this show right here can tell you what true fear is, and as for that, I can't imagine you, a little kid hiding in the blankets, hearing all these footsteps, and that must be some scary business for when you were younger. Well, how many? Everybody in the apartment heard this.
Yeah,
And
everybody did.
no one.
And like I said, everybody in the household was Christian. They all were church going people, and so they would pray. Just to rebuke you, demon. I pray that you leave. Things like that. They weren't scared. Like the way I was. Because they had Christianity to fall back on. They knew they weren't going to get hurt. But me being a young kid, I didn't know any better. So I was scared when they didn't need to be. They had other beliefs, and they knew that they weren't going to get hurt. This was just an aggravation to them.
Oh,
just something that would happen.
Just this annoyance, I guess.
Yeah. This is something that happens. It's going to happen. Just let it happen. It'll be okay. It was just one of those type deals.
So,
but me being a little kid, I'm just scared.
Right.
Wow.
Has anybody seen a ghost in there? You talked about shadow people. Has anybody actually seen a spirit of as you would call it,
in that house? Yes. Yeah. Several times. Huh. Everybody would. I mean, it wasn't one person. It would be 6 other people. Because there were brothers and sisters that lived in the house, they would sit there and see somebody at the front door standing, looking in the window like this. And when they go to open the door, nobody be there. And there would be times where they'd see somebody walk by from the back room through the kitchen to go to the upstairs, and they would walk into the kitchen. Nobody would be there. There were times they would see certain things. They'd see people all through the house. They would see all these apparitions. They'd see people standing in doorways. They'd see different things, but nobody would be there. It'd be just that quick. They'd be gone, but they would catch a glimpse of them.
So no one's seen time period clothing or anything like that?
No, they, even if they did, they never explained it to me. They would just say that, I just saw this person standing in the door. And, like I said, I was a little kid. I didn't know to ask these questions. Now I would, but, but back then, what were they wearing? What were they doing? Did they look old? Were they young? Were they, I was just a kid. Ooh, they saw a ghost, I did get scared.
Yeah. What we can agree on is that growing up, my Christian side of the family, they dealt with a lot of things like that. So maybe it's just because they're Christian. All the Christians deal with nuisance like that, because the traditional side of the family, it was polar opposite. And then the Christian side of the family, they're dealing with all kinds of things, and then alcoholism, all kinds of things just built up. So that's the correlation that I can agree with right there, that I spotted out.
I know both worlds, both aspects to that, because I've been raised traditionally in the native side, then I know the Christianity side, the both aspects. I know all of that, so I was raised in church, when I was little, so I know about all of that, and I know how it correlates and everything, and how everything intertwines, and how they act with certain things. When something happens, they have a certain way they deal with it. When native side, it's a completely different story. They deal with it another way.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And that's how I say too. Oh, go ahead, Darren. Sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
That's one thing that we can all agree on too. I've seen the traditional side, and I've seen the Christian side. I can agree with that too. Tell me one more thing. What, you would think that, they would pray. Why do you think this thing didn't go away? What made you, you can, you talked about all of them being Christian, but first, why do you think this, as hard as they prayed, this thing didn't go away? What do you think that these spirits were?
I don't know. I really don't know about that. I just know that it was a very old house. And like I said, that we're in Denver. There's a lot of evil things that happened in Denver back in the day.
Yeah.
And so there's countless things that could add to that. I really don't know how to explain it, but something permeates in every household there. It doesn't matter where you're at. You could be in Boulder, you could be in Castlewood, you can be anywhere in Colorado, and there's something always happening there. There's always something going on. I mean, the whole place is just a big melding pot of something bad that's happened. Somebody has a ghost in the house. Somebody has a spirit. Somebody's seen something, somebody's experienced something, somebody's got touched, somebody, felt something. It's just a bad area. I don't know why, but it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then if you look further back in the history, that place has all kinds of blood spilt on that ground,
Yep.
from the Comanche, the Ute, the Navajo, the Kiowa, everyone fighting over the land, over hunting resources. So, it's just, I think it's just tainted land. I think it really goes down to tainted land, and the land keeps record of trauma. That's what I believe as well. It keeps recorded the things that happened in the past. It replays it. Darren, you have a question?
Oh, no, not right now, man. Let's keep it rolling. My head's running right now. My head's running. So that little hamster's running overtime right now. I'm trying to put everything where it needs to be, and I'll ask questions later on. Right now, let's keep it going, Big Indian. Let's roll, bro.
It's all you, bro. It's all you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So after that, we left Colorado and came back to Oklahoma, and we came back here and we stayed at my grandpa's house. He had a trailer in front of his house, and that's where we stayed at. My dad was at work, and my mom was home, and my grandpa was a pastor at a church. And in the area that we were in, people didn't take kindly to Christian folks. They did a lot of devil worship. They did all kinds of evil things. They were into bad witchcraft, and bad medicine, and so they would always mess with my grandpa. And my grandpa wasn't scared. He was a really brave man. He would never let whatever they were doing intimidate him. He would just sit there and yell at him. And he had a big old long driveway, and at the end of his driveway, he would lock it at night. He had the gate that lock up, and if anybody came to the gate, he had a big spotlight because he was in the Air Force, and so he had this big old huge. I mean, the thing was huge, big old floodlight, and he would sit there and flash it down at the gate, and he would sit there and he would yell, "Who is it?" And they would have to say who it was before he lets them in, and most of the times they wouldn't say anything and they'd just drive off. That's how you knew that there was somebody trying to mess with him. And I remember one night we're sitting at the house, and my grandma had called and said, "Come enjoy dinner with us." And so we went to her house. My mom and myself went over to her house, and we were eating dinner. There was my grandpa and grandma standing at the door, or they were standing on each side of the table, and I was standing on the edge of the table eating dinner with across from my mom, and we're sitting there. Then my grandpa heard something, so he got up and he walked over there to figure out what it was. He gets out his spotlight and he shines it out to the front door, and you can hear him yelling, "Who is it?" And nothing. We didn't hear anything, so he finally come back to dinner. And we're sitting there for a minute. After a while, he got back up and he went to the front door again. He heard his spotlight come on, but he didn't say anything. All of a sudden, his light turned off because it was a loud click when you turn it off and on. And he turned it off, and he come running into the kitchen, and he went to the drawer, and he pulled out his pistol, and he went running to the front door. And at this point, everybody, all of us got scared. My mom, myself, and my grandma. What's going on? And so we took off. We ran to the front door, and my grandpa had ran out the front door. He slammed the door behind him, and so we knew not to go outside. So I'm at the window, trying to look around, see what's going on. And he's running down to the end of the driveway. My grandma, she goes to the back door, on the side of the house. Now, on the side of their house, there was a big old huge outside light, and this light would cast on the side of the house only. It wouldn't go, it was just in that side. And so she goes to the side of the house and she's looking, and all of a sudden she goes out the door. And so I heard the back door open and shut. And so I'm freaking out, like, what's going on? So I ran to the kitchen, and there's a door, or there's a window above the kitchen sink. And I popped myself up and I'm looking out the window, and my grandma has gone outside, and she has her Bible in hand, and she's sitting there going out there. And I'm sitting there watching her, and she was sitting there, and she threw her Bible down, and she went to her knees, and she started praying. And she's sitting there going on, and I was like, what is she doing? What is going on? And at that same time, an owl flew down, landed in front of her, and it was mocking her. Whatever she was saying, whatever she was praying, it was repeating back what she was saying, but in a mocking way. And it was really strange to hear a bird, an owl, speak. And I'm sitting there like, what is going on? And I'm just sitting there freaking out. I'm scared. I can't yell. I can't scream or anything. I'm just so terrified that this thing is going to attack my grandma. And I'm sitting there watching this thing, and it just sits there and it kind of like mocks her. It's flapping its wings, but you can hear it talking to her. It's talking in English. Then it translates and it switches over and it starts talking Indian to her. And it's sitting there talking to her. And I was like, what is going on? And I'd yelled for my mom at this time. And she came over and she pulled me off the sink, and she went to the window, and she was looking out the window. And so when I got pulled off the sink, I ran to the back door. I went to the back door, and they had the curtains up, and I opened the curtains, and I was watching this. So I had a clear view of my grandma's back, and I could see the wings from the bird around her. And after a while, it starts dancing around her, and it was singing. You could hear it singing as it's dancing around her, when it was mocking her. And I was just like, oh my God, I was like, again, I was scared. I was crying. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, oh my God, it's going to hurt my grandma. And my mom was watching this go on. And so she runs to the front door and she yells for my grandpa. She's like, Dad, get over here. And so she runs back to the kitchen. And so she's looking out the window, and this bird, this owl, is dancing around my grandma. And it sits there, gets kind of almost in front of her, and it turns its head to the side, and it tries to fly off. And by that time, we heard 2 rounds go off. Bam, bam. And one of them hit the bird, and it flew off. And my grandpa come into view. He went over there, and he checked on his wife. He's checking to see if she's okay. She picked up her Bible. She was sitting there praying. They both sitting there praying, and it got up, and he helped her in the house. And we came in the kitchen, and they're just sitting there, and they sit back down to eat dinner like nothing ever happened. And now, mind you, me and my mom are freaked out. We don't know what happened, but to them, it was just like an everyday thing. And so they just sat down and they started enjoying their dinner, talking about their day. And it was really weird to me. I was just like, what just happened? Are you okay? What's going on? And it scared me. It really did, and I had no answers, because like I said, I was just a little kid. Nobody's going to talk to me. And so after we got done with dinner, we did dishes. We went back to our home. We had the trailer in front. We walked to the trailer, and I asked my mom, is everything okay? And she's like, it'll be okay. So the next morning I get up and I go outside to go play, and we're in the country. So you make up things to do. And I see one of my cousins come running around the corner from the house. You could see him running through the field. And so I run around the house to meet him, to see what he's doing. And he says, I got to come over and get Grandpa. And I was like, what's going on? He says, I got to go get Grandpa. Grandma told me to get Grandpa. And I was like, okay. And so we go to the house, and my grandma and grandpa are sitting down having breakfast. And he says, great grandma told you to come to the house, and it was his mom that stayed at the house, because there was 3 houses, a trailer, a house, then another house over here. And so he gets up, he follows the kids, all of us kids go back to the house, and we go to the front door, and we walk in the door. And I remember seeing somebody standing at the back door, and he's looking over his shoulder. As the front door is opening, he's exiting the back door, slams the door, and he runs off. And my grandpa comes in, and I was like, what is going on? And he comes over, and he sees that on the table, there's all these like gauze. They're just blood soaked. And so he looks at her. What are you doing? And so he turns and he looks and he runs out the front door. And by the time he gets to the front door, the car is driving off. He's flying out of the driveway. I'm just like, what is happening? What is going on here? He goes in the house and he's asking his mom what had happened. Now, my great grandma, she was a really powerful medicine woman. She would take care of people. She would, if they had any kind of ailments, she would heal them. She would give them medicine for it, anything. Everybody came to her for all these remedies. And so he came to her house and he says, somebody has shot me last night. Grandma, somebody shot me. I need your help. And so what she was doing is she was removing the bullet from his arm, his left arm. And so my grandpa said that he shot that bird in the left wing. And that's where the bullet was in his arm, his left arm. And they said that he had transformed into an owl to come over to harass those folks, my grandma and grandpa. And she was getting after him. Whatever you do, you leave them people alone. You know better than that. While she's mending his wounds, she's scolding him. You're no better. You leave those people alone. What's the matter with you? You don't do that. You leave them alone. And he's getting fixed up, but he's getting an ear beating while he's doing it. And so all this takes place. And they go to see him, and he's denying everything. His arm's in a sling. And my grandpa tells him, don't you come back to the house again. I know that was you. Don't do that again. He just kind of waves it off. Okay, whatever. But he had transformed into an owl and came to their house to harass them because that's what he loved doing. He was like the local bully of certain things. Anybody he didn't like, he would go terrorize them like that. So it was crazy.
Wow.
Man, scare the crap out of you. Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
For that type of witch in Pawnee? Or how the Navajos, they have skinwalkers, or Yanagloji, as they say.
Yeah, there's a name for it, but it's in a different tribe because my mom was adopted by this family where this happened at, and he was Choctaw, and so they have a special name for it. They have a word for that, like Yannies, SWs. They have a special word for that type of deal, but for us, it's a little different. It's kind of like staying a bad person. So yeah. So we're told not to say it that much.
Oh, okay.
So, but it was pretty crazy, the whole incident with him.
Yeah, I bet, man. And then what? And another question: why do you think your parent or your grandparents just act like nothing happened like that? Was it just a common occurrence? Obviously it was a traumatic event.
Yeah, it was something that happened to them all the time. I mean, like I said, the entire area, they didn't like Christians. They didn't like them because of what they believed in. And a lot of people around there at that time, they were into devil worship. They were into bad medicine. And so they saw them as good people, and they helped people. They would do all these certain things. And so they would get harassed constantly by these people. And it was just a common occurrence to them. And they took it in stride. It was just like everyday thing.
Yeah, I know there's always the bad strife between, the Christian culture and the Native American culture. On my side, it's no different. And I have my stories too about that fight, between the cultures. And even I brought up, you talked about owls. We talked about owls once, and I mentioned that story with my encounter with owls and seeing stuff like that, and the exorcism type deal. It's very much real. I can't stress it enough, and that's one aspect that the world doesn't really tend to believe.
Yeah.
So, so is this man still alive, or is he?
No. He was taken in a very horrible way. It was probably, I want to say, maybe a year and a half later. He had 2 to 3 sons. I can't remember 2 or 3, but he had alienated everyone. Nobody wanted to be around him. His house was like 100 yards away from my grandpa's church, and he would play music really loud when they would have church, and everybody knew, just don't pay him no mind. We'll focus on the Lord, this and that. And so they would drown him out. They would sing songs, things like that. But he would do that to harass him intentionally. And I remember one day we were at the house and I saw a cop car come up to the gate. And so he opened the gate, and he would close the gate, but he wouldn't lock it during the day. And so he got out and he opened the gate, and I saw the cop car coming up the driveway. And so I ran to my grandpa's house and I told him, hey, there's a cop car outside. And so my grandpa came outside and he was talking to him. He's like, what's going on? And he's like, hey, there's an incident that happened out by your church. I need permission to go onto your area to go check this scene out. And he's like, okay, go ahead, go. Let's go. And so he got in his truck and they went over to the church, and because it wasn't gated or anything, they just went up the driveway. But the cop wanted to make sure that he had permission to be on my grandpa's part of the land to go to this person's house. And so he went over there, and we all went. All of us did. I remember my grandma, my mom, myself, my grandpa, we all walked in. The officer went first. My grandpa went second. I went third. And my mom and my grandma were behind me. And we walk in the house, and he had like this little 2-room shack. We walked in the front, and he had like this little makeshift kitchen, sink, storage area, all this and that. Then the next room was his bedroom. And we walked in the front room and we saw everything, and it was just destroyed. Somebody had went through there, just like knocked everything over. We went to the second room, and the officer walked in, and he walked all the way in. He turned around, and my grandpa had walked into the doorway, and I was peeking around the corner to see what I could see in the door. And what I saw was this man in the corner of the room, and he had this look of terror in his eyes, like he was scared, but he was past. He was gone. And my grandpa seen him because he was looking this direction, and all of a sudden he looked over and he saw him, and immediately he pushed me back. And I walked in and I looked to the right immediately. And so it gave me a few seconds to see this guy. And my grandpa pushed me back, and he turned around and he said, don't come in here. And everybody knew not to go in there because there was somebody in there. And so my grandpa and the officer was in that room. And I remember seeing that guy's face, his look of terror, like he was scared to death. Whatever it was, a lot of stories was going around, but the one that really stuck out was that he had sold his soul to the devil to have these special powers, to have these certain abilities to do things. And the devil came to collect his due. And so that guy had the look of terror on his face when he came to collect him. That's what the story was. But the officers, I don't know what they put in their books to how they explained it or anything, but it was just a bad situation. Yeah, I just remember looking at his face, and I'll never forget it. I'll never forget his look of face. It was just horrible, like he was scared to death, and it was terrifying. But he's no longer with us. He's gone. Wow. And when they told his sons, the sons were like, "I don't care. I don't care.
Wow.
Keep his stuff. I don't want none of them." So it was just a bad deal.
Yeah. Hopefully all that dark teaching and that dark knowledge left with him. That's what we all can hope for right there. Man. Just could you imagine the owl with his wings out, jumping around you and dancing and copying you? Hey, I've heard quite a few stories of owls doing that, but I never heard an owl speaking English. That one's a new one right there. That's actually creepy right there. I've heard owls speaking Navajo and singing in Navajo, but in the witchcraft way though. I've heard that. Darren, you have any questions for Big Indian?
Has this man what other works did this man do besides just terrorizing? Obviously, he turned into an owl. Had the ability to do that. What other nuisance did this guy do to everybody in the community?
He would chase the kids around down the road because the kids would walk down the road to go to the store like 3 miles. There was a little gas station, so the kids would go down to the store to go get their snacks and stuff. And he'd been doing it for years. When my mom was little, he would come down the road in his car, and he would tell the kids to get in his car. I'm going to go take you, go eat you. I'm going to go do this. You know, he would terrorize them. You know, he'd tell he's going to do evil things to them. And so the kids would turn around and run back home. You know, they'd go back home and tell their parents. They'd tell my grandma and grandpa, you know, tell my great grandma, you know, so-and-so was doing this. He did this. And so my great grandma, she would call him and scold him. You leave these kids alone. What's the matter with you? You know, and he would just kind of laugh it off, you know, because to him it was fun. But there was a lot of incidences that he would do to other people. You know, these are the stories that I know firsthand. I don't know what he used to do to other people, but I know that he used to terrorize them a lot. You know, like I said, he wasn't a good person. He alienated his own sons. They didn't want nothing to do with him. You know, it was bad.
Yeah, there's a man. It's kind of it's kind of strange how people would want to act this way. You know, terrorize kids like that, and just be a nuisance to the community. What was his? Do you ever hear anything about his grandparents? What was his? Was he alienated as a kid too, or?
I don't know anything about any of his family. I
was way back.
I was too young to know. You know, he was kind of probably in his 60s or 70s when all this happened. And I was about 10 to 12 at this time.
Oh man, he had plenty of time to run around and learn a few bad things. That's for sure.
Yep. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah,
that's karma. Came and collect them. That's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Darren, do you have any questions before we let Big Indian continue?
Oh no, I know Big Indian got a lot more going on. We're not even at an eighth of it, so man, let's keep it going, man.
It's all you, brother.
All right. So that was one incident there. After that, we left that part of Oklahoma and we went to Oregon. We went up to Oregon after that. We went to Oregon and we would have all these different incidences that happened. They had SPs up there. They would, you'd see them run around town. You'd see them blatantly in the streets. You know, they wouldn't hide the fact that they were out. You would just see them walk down the streets, late at night, during the day. It was crazy. I couldn't believe that. And at this point, I was probably around, I want to say 12, maybe 13. No, I was about 11. And I was, still a kid at the time. And so we would see all these things in the streets. And my mom and them wouldn't allow us to be alone anywhere downtown because of that. We'd see that and we would point it out. Did you see that? Did you see that? And so we would make sure, we were never alone. They'd say, yeah, be careful. Don't go down here by yourself. And we used to ride the bus. They had public transit. And I used to love riding the bus, so I used to ride the bus to go see my dad during lunchtime. I would catch the bus and I would meet him downtown and we would walk to his office. We'd have lunch. He'd walk me back to the bus stop and I would sit there and catch the bus and go home. And even then I was never alone. The only time I was alone was on the bus, but I was never alone anywhere else. When I get off the bus, my mom would be right there to pick me up and she'd take me home. And it was scary, just seeing these things out and about. And I remember we had made friends with this family up there. And so we had gone to their house one night and they were card playing people. They loved to play cards. And there was an old Indian game that they taught my folks. And so they would stay up all night playing these games. And they would have fun, they would laugh. And there was no alcohol involved. There was no smoking or anything. They would just have fun. So they would go upstairs and they'd play games. And I would go downstairs and I would talk with their son. Their son, he must have been about maybe 20, maybe 19 or so. He wasn't old. He was older than me, but he wasn't old. And he had an exit out his bedroom that went outside. And so we would sneak out when all the card playing would go. And we would catch the bus and go downtown. We'd sneak out. And we would go downtown and we would go, and he would take me to these certain sections of town that were all these Shanghai tunnels. Have you heard about those in Oregon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's kind of a weird thing that this is during the Chinese alienation too. So they would have they didn't want them around town during the day or during the night, so they built tunnels and stuff like that. It's kind of a weird occurrence. I know they had some in Globe and Flagstaff at the time too. These tunnels all the way down. I'm pretty sure there were these tunnels were downtown too, right?
Yes. Yeah, they were all over, but they weren't just for Chinese. They were for everyone. What they would do was that they would trap people and they would sell them to merchants on ships, and they would be shanghaied, and they would be sold to these people on ships to to be free labor for their ships. So all these tunnels existed downtown Portland. And so we would go down there and he would tell me stories about, this is where this one is, this is where that one is. There's supposedly an entrance right here. He would tell me all these different entrances to these tunnels. We would never go into them because, for one thing, I was just a kid. He didn't want to put me in danger. And second of all, a lot of these places were by bars. And so we weren't allowed anywhere near bars. And so when they would see us by the bar, the bouncers outside, hey, you kids get out of here. And so we would have to leave. But he would tell us there's an entrance right there. You lift up there and he would explain all this to me. And I remember one time we went to this one place. I could never tell you how to get there again, but we went to this one bar and there was no doorman out there. And so we had access to get into one of the tunnels. And so we went into the tunnel. He opened it up and we went inside, and we didn't go very far, mind you. We just went probably downstairs, and it was probably 6 feet in there, but it was really creepy. You had this really musty smell. It was, it was dark. He had his lighter out for light. We're sitting there and we're looking around. He's like, now you could tell people you've been in a tunnel. You've been in these tunnels down here. It's scary down here. You can get lost down here because they all connect. They all go all over town. And he'd explain this to me, and I was just fascinated by it. An older kid was teaching me these things. And so I was sitting there listening to him and everything. And while he's explaining it to me, he said, all these all connect. There's all over town. We heard a woman screaming. And we're just like, what? Oh, what was that? And I immediately got scared. Oh, and instinct, I ran to the stairs, and he was still standing there with his little lighter, looking to see where that came from. And I told him, I says, come over here, get over here. Let's go. I wanted to get out of there, but he was kind of exploratory and he was kind of looking, and whatever it was, we heard scream was in the distance. The next scream we heard was a little closer, and it was louder, and it scared us all. And so he come running back to me, let's go, get out of here. And so I went running up them steps, as fast as I could go. I get up to the street level. He's right behind me, and he shuts them doors. And just when he shuts the doors, we heard screaming again, and silence as soon as the doors shut. That's how quiet it was. You couldn't hear nothing as soon as the doors were shut. But you can hear her mid-scream, silence. It was crazy. I was just like, oh, what was that? We took off running. We went running to the bus stop. It's time to get home. Let's go home. But that was scary to hear a woman screaming. And it was completely dark down there. There was nobody with a flashlight. We didn't see anybody down there. But you can hear a woman screaming from down there. And he would say that there was all kinds of evil things that were done down there to people. So I was probably a ghost from somebody from the past still living in the tunnels. And I was just like, oh, I'm never going to go back there. Never again, never again. And I never did. I was too scared to.
Man, just imagine what they're using the tunnels for right now. You know, maybe human trafficking. Shoot. Might be one of those ones where, hey, Big Indian, where's it at? How do we get there? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's the thing about that place, because it's all open information. You can ask people there, you know, where are these tunnels entrances, and they'll tell you it's right there. You know, go over here, go over there, go over there. They're well known, but hardly anybody goes into them because they're so spooky. They're so scary. There's all kinds of evil things that happen there. You know, it's just ew.
I don't know. That might be one of the paranormal hotspots. We would like. I wouldn't mind going in there, but hey, that's just me and curiosity. So, you said that you seen shadow people everywhere. Is that you, or was that everybody in the town or city?
I don't know if anybody else saw it. I know me and my family saw them, because I would ask my mom and dad if they'd seen them, and they would say, yes, we see them. They would see them walking down the street. Now, I couldn't vouch for the next person in the car next to us if they could see him, or if it was a common occurrence, or they couldn't see him. I don't know. But I know that we did. And after we left, we got on the bus and we went back to my friend's house. We're going down the alley to go back to his house. And 2 blocks over, we could see him gathering at the end of the block in the alley. There was all these SPs standing in the alley. It was like they were waiting for us to come back. You know, so we were sitting there walking back to the house, and we're 20 feet away, and he notices them. And he stops, and he tells me, AD, get in the house, get in the house. And so I'll do it as I was told, because I was scared. And so I get to the house, and all of a sudden I turn around, and he's right behind me running. And he said, they're chasing after us, get in the house. And so we get in the house, he locks the door, and I asked him, what's happening? He says, there was all these SPs at the end of the block. And when they saw him, they start running down the street toward him, like they're coming to get him. And so he ran in the house. So I don't know if it's because of our adventure that we had that night or what, but they were out looking for us.
So obviously you've seen a lot of these, these SPs, shadow people. Do you think they're attracted to you, or do you think there's something about your origin that gives you the ability to see these things? But
I don't know. That's one thing I always ask myself. I'm I guess unlucky. I guess I see these things. I know other people have seen them. There's some of my friends at school. They would talk about them, but it was like a glazed over subject. You know, they back then, this was in the 80s, and they were scared. You know, all these kids were scary. They were leery of certain things. They didn't know about ghost stories and stuff. And so their thinking and thought process was, if you see a Native American, make friends with him, because he will be your protector. And so I had all these friends. I didn't know hardly any of them, but they were all my friends. And they thought I was going to protect them. And so I was like, protect them from what? What do you need protection from? And there would be some girls that say, oh, there's certain things that we see. There's certain things that happen. You know, they had these thoughts and these things that happened to them. They would never explain it to me, but they said they need protection from. But it was really weird at that time. I had no idea.
Wow. And to that, I would say like, share, and subscribe. You know, we got your natives right here too. So, that you guys were just a bunch of kids too at the time, huh? Just
yeah.
Wow, that's something else. Shadow people, I seen them. I know. So, I know what you're talking about. I don't ask for what they are. I think they might be spies. People watching. So, as for that, I think they might most likely come from a demonic side, evil, as you said, the evil bad medicine side. And I think that might be I think that is a trait of the evil, evil walkers, evil medicine men. So,
or you're just gifted too. You can see in the other realm, and like Car Bear 9 says, your light they are attracted to, and that's what I believe, because even when you're asleep, sometimes spirits will come to you and say, "Hey, can you help me? I'm lost." They'll be asking you to help, and I know Lee. He's probably listening. He's like, "Hey, don't talk to them. Leave them alone." So, they could be disembodied spirits, ancestors. Who really knows? But I think they're another being that can walk in the realm that we can't quite see, and that's why our dogs and cats are able to see some that we can't quite see. That's what I believe in as well. Darren, do you have any other questions for Big Indian before we let him cook again? A few seconds. You can think about your question.
I can hear you. Go ahead. Keep talking.
Oh, hey. Okay.
So your mom and your parents, obviously, you go to one area and then something happens. You guys go to another area. Something, it kind of seems like that right now. So you moved over and you went to another, paranormal spot. How did your parents see all this? What was their idea of,
the way they thought about it is it was weird incidences. They experienced certain things in their life. They would witness to certain things that were paranormal to them, and they dealt with it the way they best could, the only way they could. And this was just another thing on the list that happened to them. Something scary happened today. Add it to the list. Let's move on. It's just something that would go on. And my dad was an accountant for the government, and so we would travel all over the place. We would go from all these different cities while he would do his work. And so he would be in Oregon, San Diego, Denver, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Sacramento. We were all over the place. Went to Dallas, Washington D.C., Atlanta. We'd go all over the place for him to work. Every place he would go to, something would happen.
Are these all military bases, or
No, this is government jobs.
Oh shoot! Oh, okay. Wow.
These are government jobs. He worked for the government. He was a accountant for years, and so they would ship him here to work on a project. We need these books balanced here. And as soon as he was done with that, we got another assignment over here. And so the government would pay him to travel to these different places to go work on these books. And so that was his profession.
So out of all the travels, were they all like this, or was
No. Okay. We had a fairly good childhood. Things would happen that were fun, things like that. But every once in a while, we'd run into things like this. It wasn't until from 13 to say 16, it was good. There was nothing that happened. After we left Portland, it was fine. Went to San Diego, went to Sacramento, went to Dallas, went to DC. Everything was fine until we moved up north. Then we moved up north, and that's when we went to the reservation, and that's when I started experiencing a lot of things. Everything that this reservation had to offer, I experienced it, and that's where I grew up at, was there.
Wow. So we did do a jump right there, 13 to 16, pretty good years. So after all that, now you have to lead us into the 16 where everything starts to get bad. we're
Before we go further, do you still feel like you're 16? No, just kidding. Go ahead.
I'm 20.
I feel 20. No, just kidding. Go ahead. It's all you.
I'm 20, but my body feels 80.
Right.
My back.
Yep. My back, my knees. But
man.
when when I moved up to the reservation, there was quite an adjustment from moving to major cities to the reservation. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know hardly anything, and so I had to adjust. And so when I did that, I had to learn how to be a little res kid, because that's all there was there. And so everybody kind of looked at me as the outsider right off the bat, but I was smart. I knew more than other kids because I had been different places. I experienced a lot of other things, and so I was kind of, for like the first year, I was kind of an outcast. Nobody really wanted to associate with me until I started telling them some of my stories, about my past. I've been here, been there, and then I started making friends. Then I was the kid who had been everywhere. That in their mind, I'd been everywhere. But I'd just traveling across the nation. So
Before we get into this, I have one more question. Is this your res? Is this, or was
my
this?
this was my mom's res.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, she wanted to go back home, and so my mom decided, let's move back home to her res. So we did, and then we stayed there for many years. I went to high school and finished there.
No, right on.
But in that time, a lot of things happened. When I went to school, I went to what is it? Middle school. I went to middle school there, and I knew immediately that there was something wrong. Is because when I went there, the gymnasium, they had rooms downstairs, and when I went to the rooms downstairs into our classroom, sometimes doors would slam shut. They would creak open, slam shut. It was crazy. And there would be no wind activity. There'd be no way that these doors would be able to open and shut by themselves. But here they were, slamming shut. At the end of the hallway, they had restrooms, and they had big old thick, heavy wooden doors. And so when you open the doors would squeak open. They would creak loud. Then the doors would catch and slowly start closing, and it'd be about this much. Then it'd slam shut, and it'd be loud. You could hear it. And so that's how you knew somebody went to the restroom. But you could also hear that when nobody was around. You'd hear the door opening up, and the door would slam shut. But you knew that there's nobody down there but a couple of people. It was really crazy. I mean, there was all kinds of spooky stuff that happened in that place.
Wow. Almost seems like all these stories of, in your youth were in the basement. So
Yeah.
That's that American horror flick, I think
Yeah.
best stay out of the basement,
Yeah, it was a gymnasium is what it was, and since there was an Indian school, they converted the downstairs. I guess they were like storage areas and classrooms is what they tried to make it, to be part of the gymnasium. But they converted these classrooms into an actual classroom. They would put us in a room, and they would have 7 to 8 kids in there, and that was our classroom. And I went to school there from 8 to 9. From 8th grade to 9th grade. In 9th grade, I went to high school, and that was a different part of this school campus. But downstairs is where they had us for that first year.
Dang.
And so we went to school there, and we would be downstairs, and during the day, nothing would happen. There would be no activity in the gymnasium because they would get prepared for either that evening or something. Only in the morning, they would open up the weight room for the firemen or anybody who wanted to come work out. And the gymnasium was open, but hardly anybody would go up there and play because they knew they had school class downstairs. And so everybody kind of respected, don't be playing basketball when school's in session. And so we would be downstairs, and we would hear somebody running around upstairs. And we never did really think nothing of it, until we'd go, we'd get out of break. We'd go outside, they'd give us time to go outside for fresh air. And we would sit there and say, who was upstairs? We heard somebody running around. And the staff from the gymnasium was like, there was nobody in here. Nobody was in here.
Hmm.
So I've been in the office all day and nobody'd run through here. But we would hear them downstairs. You could hear them running on the court. But they, everybody in the office would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. We didn't hear anybody.
Man, that sounds kind of sad. Being in the basement. I bet a lot of artificial light. I bet.
Yeah, it was fluorescent lighting all over the place.
Ah,
It was well lit. I mean, I'll grant it that it was well lit, and the cafeteria was catty corner from us because as soon as you walk in downstairs, they had the art room and the art classroom, then the weight room, and across the hall was the cafeteria. That's where everybody ate. The whole school would come up from the other part of campus. They would all meet up in this little area, and everybody would feed right there. They had a bunch of tables, a bunch of chairs, everything. And it was all well lit. There was no dark corners anywhere in that place. So it wasn't really nothing to be scared about until the lights were off.
Yeah, that's usually how it works. So, well, we're almost down to the last bit right here, Big Indian. You got any words of wisdom out there to the listeners?
The words of wisdom is if you feel any kind of bad feeling, get out of there. That's the one thing I can't stress enough. If you have a bad gut feeling, trust your gut. Get out of there. There's so many times that I've went with that feeling and I've got out of there and I've got out of there safely. People say, well, why do I trust my instincts? I'm going to stay and witness this. Something's telling me to witness it. Something's going on. No, get out of there. If something's telling you to leave, leave. Most of all, don't whistle at night. You're going to call something towards you.
All right. And we got all the reasons why, too. So,
yeah,
right here, it's just not a saying. It's actually, words of wisdom spread across this Turtle Island. So, to that, I'm looking forward to having you back on in the future. And I'm pretty sure you're going to be back on and on until we get to the present day. Then we'll start talking about everyday life, So.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I got you on here, and everyone listening. How's December 5th sound to you?
No, I can't do December 5th. That's somebody's birthday.
Oh, okay. How about December 12th?
Yeah, we can plan for that.
Okay. One more time, beginning. Can you let everyone know where to find you on TikTok?
TikTok, you can find me on Big Indian. Let me look it up here. I don't want to give everybody false information. But
yeah. If they ask me, I'll send them right towards you as well. If anyone has any problem.
My name on there is Big Indian, but you could also go at Big Pawnee Boy, BOI. That's the name on it. But everybody knows me by Big Indian. But if you look for me, you can find me on there. Big PAWNEE BOI. That's on TikTok. And you'll see me. I'll stand. In the picture, I got braids in. I don't got braids in today. I've got it pulled back. But I got a hat on. I got my braids in. That's my picture, my profile picture. But
Dickies button-up shirt.
Yep. And I post memes on my page. I try to be funny. Anything strikes me funny, I post it on my page. But I go lives. That's when I tell my scary stories. That's I interact with people. I'd rather do it that way than have it online.
Right. Everyone out there, you do not want to miss a Big Indian live, whether he's doing his own live or jumping in on another live. Everyone loves to hear his stories. Everyone loves to hear his interesting life. And Darren and I are in that line as well. So, everyone get in line, and I'm pretty sure everyone's going to find you after this episode as well. Beginning, do you have any final shout outs you want to give to anyone out there listening?
The final shout outs I want to give out to Sean. He's on TikTok as well. He's the one that would first go on live, and he's the one I would first started going on live and telling my stories to. Uh, Lodge Tales podcast. He's another one. I go to his podcast, and I tell my stories there. There's Vanita, there's Shira. The Secret Society sisters. I get on their page and I tell my stories there. There's all these different creators. We all came together and we found one another as storytellers, and we just share stories. That's all we do. We've made a little family community together. But those are the main ones that I want to shout out to, as well as you, Don. And Darren. You guys. I go into your lives. I tell stories. I listen to your adventures you go on. I tell my stories there. So you guys are the main ones. But those are my shout outs to people. And there's a lot of other people out. I know I'm forgetting, but those are just the main ones I can really tell right now. But yeah, those are my shout outs. To everybody who's listening. I do appreciate it. Like I said, these stories are just up to when I was just a teenager. You have a lot more experiences.
Oh yeah, we're at early teens right now with Big Indian, and we'll come back with early 20s and mid 20s in the next episode. So
yeah, right now we're at the awkward teenage phase. And then we'll get into the wild sneaking out the window phase next time.
Get them good reservation stories.
Oh yeah. Bring on the teepee creeping stories, man.
Dang, no way. Those are the untold stories.
Those are the real scary stories. No, just play. But hey, Big Indian, man, we appreciate you coming on the United Public Radio Network, and you reached a lot more listeners as well, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna have more followers on TikTok, and everyone here is gonna be wanting you back and asking when you're coming back. So to everyone out there listening, it's gonna be December 12th. He's coming back on. So get your popcorn ready. You got plenty of time to get your drinks and snacks. And thank you again, Big Indian. Your time is very valuable, and it is well spent here with us and many of us here on the radio. Darren, do you want to say any final things before we close out?
Oh yeah. Talking about that, Eve Thunder, her family is barely getting recognized by the NFL. The Ohio Orang Indians, the first all Native American football team for the NFL. So they just released that. So I thought that was pretty cool. I never heard of an all Native American football team. So, well, now America does. So I think that's a great awesome thing. So, and thank you, Big Indian, man. Definitely got the creep factor in. Scare the kid. So,
yeah, hopefully it didn't scare anybody too badly.
We shall see. We shall see. And again, thank you, Big Indian, and Darren. Great job again. And I'm going to be closing us out right here, right now, guys. Okay.
All right. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Later.
Oh, yeah. Likewise, brother. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Here goes, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Don't Whistle at Night. We have been broadcasting here on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 Mississippi and the Gulf Coast. Roku TV, everyone out there, appreciate you listening to us. And thank you guys. And from Big Indian, Darren, and I, you guys take it easy out there. Have a great week. And remember, don't whistle at night, everyone. Don't whistle at night. All right. Okay, a few seconds here. Okay, here we go. See ya. Peace.
Welcome to Don't Whistle at Night podcast, where Navajo legends echo in the shadows. Darren and Dawn will guide you through the sacred fire of native storytelling, where the old stories breathe, the unknown walks among us, and voices, long hidden, rise to be heard. And remember, don't whistle at night.